I grew up Betsy. I mean, I'm named Elizabeth. My father nicknamed me after Davy Crockett's shotgun, named Betsy, big hunting family. And I hated it. So I kept trying to go back to Elizabeth, and I finally did in college, and it stuck. But now Betsy is like a term of endearment. It's got a place in my heart, but I feel like a queen in my soul. So Elizabeth is more my jam.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm just going to get out there in front and say that we've had a lot of people ask about our hats, the Your Mom hats, over the last couple of years. And I feel like over the last couple of weeks, the demand has really gone up. Betsy, is that fair to say?
That's true. I mean, as the person who is responding to Instagram comments, I've got to say the interest has peaked.
The interest has peaked. So here's the deal. We finally have them up on our website, yourmom.co. There is a limited selection right now, but we'll get more if there's demand. So if you want a Your Mom hat, if you want a Your Mom crop top, we just added crop tops to the mix. Go to yourmom.com. Thank you, by the way, for the support, everyone. It is always awesome to hear from you. And I feel like sometimes we're doing this in a vacuum, and I would do this just for, the people who host the show and the people we have on it, because it is such a special place. But then sometimes you get a note and you're like, oh man, people are listening and somebody got something that they needed from that episode. How wonderful. And in that same vein, I think this is going to be one of those special episodes that people are going to reach out about, because I am just so excited to introduce a woman and a friend who I absolutely love to you today. We'll get into how we know each other a little bit later, but this is going to be, Betsy, a conversation and a topic that we've never touched on in this show. And I think it's such a big sort of, there's a lot to get into with Elizabeth Kendig, who is our guest today. But I always say, and I've told her this before, but she is someone who has helped turn a light on inside of me. And she has an incredible story. She has dedicated now kind of like the 2.0, I'll call it, of her career to what she calls taking the weird out of the woo. And she co-authored a book called Chase You, which is right here. We'll link it in there, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But it's a guide to connecting with the other side. And we're going to talk about what exactly that means. And Betsy, I know that you've read the book. So before we bring her on and I read the rest of her bio, just real quick, when I told you, hey, can you read this book? were you surprised at what I had offered to you? Were you like, what's going on? What is this? Or what was your experience of reading Chase You?
Well, so you'll hear more about what Chase You is about, but I think it's normal to go into it if you are a skeptical person and start reading it and be like, I don't know. I'm not sure. But I was quickly proven wrong. Part of the book is that you can like set signs that the other side can contact you through these signs. And so I was like, fine, I'll set a sign. And my sign was popcorn. And I was on a plane. I was like, I don't think I'm going to have popcorn appear on this plane. And then the next chapter was like, sit down, pop some popcorn. And I was like, all right. All right, you got me. So from that point on, and I will share more about how popcorn kept popping up, literally.
Amazing. But it is. And I think that's what's so fascinating about it, right? Is that there is this, and that's why when she talks about taking the weird out of the woo, I think a lot of people maybe are skeptics or aren't sure, or people like me, and we'll get into this too, who are Catholic or have certain religious beliefs that feel like, ooh, we shouldn't be doing this. Yeah. And I just think this book is so beautiful because it's sort of a practical, easy guide that just opens your eyes to a lot of things. So she has an incredible background. As I mentioned, she's been a magazine editor, an award-winning beauty blogger, skincare founder. She calls herself an accidental influencer, which I love. She all of a sudden found herself with like 5.5 million Pinterest followers and was living from the outside what appeared to be a very abundant and successful life. But as she'll talk about, I think on the inside, there was a lot more going on than that. She has talked about dealing with depression. She had an autoimmune disease. And she went on a self-help bender, as she says, and found her way into this world of holistic practice. And she started the Healers podcast. So she knows all about hosting podcasts. She'll probably be hosting this one by the end of the episode. And she started a website named Healers Wanted. She wrote Chase You. And as of today, she's still very much in that space, but she's kind of got a new chapter, which I can't wait to talk with her about. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did with the one and only Elizabeth Kendig.
I was on Instagram a little bit earlier today. A friend sent me, like, DM'd me about some article we had been discussing, and I literally sent her in my response just the popcorn emoji. So they're with us.
I'll close the loop on this because I was on an airplane when I was reading it, and I was heading to Mexico City, also not a place super known for popcorn. Like, it's not like I was like on the way to the movie theater. And so I read the next chapter was popcorn came up. And then we were walking through like a street fair. They were selling all sorts of like authentic Mexican dishes and candy. And then also just like a popcorn vendor was there. I was like, okay, that's two. And then I told my friends who I was with, and later that day they were like, Betsy, I think you have to see this. We were in like a textile market, and there was just a sweater that had popcorn embroidered on it. And I was like, okay.
I hear you.
That's how it works. That's how it works. And I mean, I know people listening haven't read the book, but we're talking about, see, here I am hosting. We're talking about the first step in Chase You is validating for yourself that you have this team on the other side and that they exist. And it's such an important step because we love that people are skeptical, because it's real fun for us when popcorn happens and you're like, told you so, and you can't deny it. And so people come up with a sign that they want the other side to send to them. And you did popcorn, and I did, I believe, yellow butterflies. And I was living in Minnesota at the time, and it was February, and I was like, good luck, good luck. And of course, a yellow butterfly didn't like fly in front of my face. And of course, your popcorn wasn't all like someone bringing you a bowl of microwave popcorn at the office or whatever.
Right.
The signs show up in these. I mean, it could be a word in an email, or it was like on a TV show. So, and
can I jump in
your
here
body
really quickly and
yeah.
tell you that I walked home this morning. I had to take my car in to get it, to get the oil change. So I'm walking home, and I'm listening to the podcast that you hosted with Monica Lawson, who is your co-author of this book. And we'll link it in the show notes. It's a wonderful, I don't want to say Cliff's Notes version of what the book became, because there's so many great stories within the book that aren't in that podcast, but it really lays out so much of, what this work is and what's available. And as I was walking up to my house, it was just like this beautiful San Francisco day. The sun is out. And I just like paused for some reason. And I was like, man, the world just feels good right now. And a yellow butterfly, I shit you not, flew in front of me. And I'm like, I have full on goosebumps right now. And
Me
I'm like,
too.
Wow, that is, I don't even know what that was, but that was so, what was it? Like, I've never seen a butterfly like that. Like, wow, that was awesome. And then I went inside. So here
you were in the city. You were in the city. You're not in, the redwoods like I am, where there's, but okay. So this is
there you go.
Good. I mean, it's a proud moment, but also I find, and Ashley, you and I have experienced this, that we are often messengers for each other. Yeah. Like, I'm sure you both have friends or family where you have a dream about them, or you think of something and you're like, I should tell them that. I'm not sure why, but like, we're all kind of connected.
So we referenced talking about asking for signs and what that means. And we've talked about popcorn and yellow butterflies, but like, how can you describe what's the goal in asking for the signs? And then like, how do people actually do it?
So this sort of like validation test where you threw out a sign, popcorn, that is to verify for yourself, like, oh, my team exists. So you weren't asking a question. You were just saying, show me popcorn 3 times in 3 days, so I know you're there. So now you know they're there, and now you can start working with them. And we like people to start small. So I would not ask your team, like, if I should marry this guy. Like, also, like, yes or no questions, not great, because we have a lot of our own biases. But there are signs you don't even have to ask for. You just need to tune in to. When you start getting a sign regularly, like let's say it's yellow butterflies for you, Ashley, and you say, like, you say, okay, I hear you, team. I see that. And you appreciate it. And it becomes one of your things. Like, they will use butterflies with you more often. One of my things is Phil Collins songs. So I love Phil Collins. I love Genesis. I am a child of the 80s. And there are times when I'm in transition or trying to make a big decision, and I will walk into stores, restaurants, the most random places, and Phil will just be blasting. And I'll be like, okay, I hear you. I hear you. Like, I know I need to do this thing. Like, you already know. Usually we have the answer already. We're just looking for a very like definitive sign. So,
and to me, I almost feel like too, it makes so much sense. It's almost like a signpost sometimes too. Like when you are walking even sometimes the right path. I've shared with you, the number 22 has very deep meaning to me and came into my life a couple years ago, and I see it everywhere. I mean, when I say that I see it everywhere, it is everywhere, and it's gotten to the point that when I see it, I just smile because I'm like, okay, I think I'm on, I think to me, what I feel like I'm on the right path. Like I'm going, like things feel good. And whenever I see a 22, it's just like, it's almost a reminder like, hey, you're not alone.
That's right. That's right. It doesn't need to be an answer to a question. It can be, yes, we're here and you're doing great. It's validating. And
we're recording. It's currently the 22nd.
It is.
Also my birthday.
You're December 22nd, Betsy? Yeah, of course it is. Of course you are. And we picked this date when we were looking at the calendar, and I'm like, we could do the 21st, 22nd. I'm like, it's that we should do the 22nd.
Yeah. We met when that number was, remember, didn't I get home or I got something like, I got a 22 for you, like immediately after we met. Yeah.
It was right after I got home from covering the Utah football story that was very tragic. And when I talked about like how raw I was when I met you, I was coming into lunch, and I think it was just, I had just gotten home the night before from being in Dallas and sitting with this family of Ty Jordan, a football player at Utah who had died, and he wore number 22. And I mean, there's a big story there that, it's the number 22 has a lot of meaning. Anyone who follows the Utah football program knows that. And ever since then, and it's one of the ways that I've stayed connected to the families of both of the young men who have died who wore number 22, because he lost another teammate who was a good friend of his, and Aaron Lowe. And I text, their families still, because I get 22s out of nowhere, and I'm like, I'm just thinking about you. Or, there are just these moments. I guess I'll share one other quick story, knowing that we've already gone way over. The morning, so Ty Jordan passes away, we do this story, and it was like this really tragic thing that impacted the team. Well, it was doubly compounded by 9 months later, his good friend who was wearing number 22 in his honor, who received the Ty Jordan Memorial Scholarship, a guy by the name of Aaron Lowe, he died also by gun violence. And it rocked, obviously, the team, the community. It was just this horrific thing. And I remember, like, we had put together this story that we were doing for the Pac-12 network on Ty Jordan, that now the story we were going to tell is totally incomplete, right? Like, that's not, you can't just tell that story. It's much bigger than that. So we book a flight to go out so that we can meet with the family of Aaron. And that morning, there was just a bunch of stuff that was going on. I almost missed my flight. My flight was canceled. There was all of this stuff. In any event, I was in such a panic, and I felt so stressed. And I was like, am I even supposed to be doing this? Like, why do I feel like, and I forgot my computer, and I ran back upstairs. I got my computer and I opened it up to make sure it was charged for the flight. And it just says, like, the only thing I see on it is it was charged at 22%. And I was like, okay, thank you. That's all I needed. Put it in my bag, and like off to the airport I went. And it ended up being that it was, again, the most meaningful story that I've ever been a part of in my career. And it really impacted what I'm thinking about doing for my work now, and how I think of myself in the work that I do. And so there are things that you never understand how they are going to show up in your life and what they mean and why. But when you start to pay attention to them and understand that everything is connected, you do live a much more magical life, and there is much more meaning to it. And
you do.
There's nothing that you can give a gift to somebody other than why I love this book. because you do allow people to open their eyes to those who want to see it. So that's my experience.
And it is magical. It is magical. I get excited for anyone starting out on this path because it's in the beginning, especially, it's just like, oh my gosh. So just enjoy it.
Okay. So, and I think the thing that's funny about this is that we were trying to figure out, so we, for the kind of inside underneath the car hood for how a podcast works, like I usually try to have a conversation, no matter how well I know somebody, even if it's a friend who's coming on the show, we have a conversation just to say, hey, here's some things. What do you want to talk about? Let's kind of get this in order of what we want to say. And Elizabeth, you and I were on the phone for like an hour and a half a couple weeks ago, going through all of the things that we could talk about. And finally at the end, you were like, hey, Ashley, I don't think we're going to get to that if we do these first 29 topics.
We should have just recorded our phone conversation.
Yeah, we should have. That probably would have been just as good use of time, because there's so much here, and it's impossible for us to dive into all of it. But I think, I would love to kind of step back and start with your story a little bit. Like you told me in that phone call that growing up when you were a little girl, that you wanted to be one of two things, either the editor of Vogue or an Olympic figure skater. Yeah. So how are those things going?
Best laid plans. And I told Ashley, I don't even know if I've said that out loud. I never competed in figure skating. I just really liked watching it on the Olympics. Okay. I just also really loved Vogue and knew that I liked to write, which is not the same as being like a yearbook editor. And so I didn't pursue either of those things whatsoever, but I think it's indicative of, I am a dreamer. I like the big stuff. And that is, I guess, sort of, it ties back to Chase You. Like we are chasing, I hope everyone on this call and listening is like, you're just, we're chasing our best selves. And so as a young girl, I wanted it all. I dreamt really big. And then when the practical steps came along, I was like, that's not fun. So I've learned some lessons in that department with age.
But like triple axel?
No, toe pick. So yeah, but the writing, I did become a magazine editor, and I loved beauty, lifestyle, anything glossy, girly, from an early age. I was playing in my grandmother's like giant, like bathroom cabinets, like floor to ceiling, with the Aquanet and the Pond's cold cream and the Revlon lipsticks. And as I got older and had a beauty career, I realized that what drew me to beauty was not the aesthetic piece. That's really fun, and I enjoy that. And it takes me an hour plus to get ready in the morning. But it was the original, and the, like, even before I understood it, it was an act of self-love. It was giving myself that self-care was like, because I didn't know how to give it to myself any other way. I was the negative self-talk and the pressure and, growing up, and I wasn't getting it. And so that's what beauty still is for me. It's a lot more spiritual than I realized.
Which I love. And I think I had never really thought about it that way. And you putting it in those terms was really, I love that, because I think we feel sometimes, it feels vain, like to have all these beauty products and to do all this stuff and to have the clothes. But like, no, I feel good. People talk about all the time, like how hard it is to be a woman. I'm like, I love being a woman. Like, I love it. And I love all the stuff that goes along with it. And I lean into it totally. And it took me a while to kind of get there. But when you think about, and you've, you have said and written about and talked about how growing up, like, you weren't happy. You felt different. You felt disconnected. You felt like you didn't belong. And so what was it that ultimately, tell me kind of just your path of like what it was like for you growing up. And then all of a sudden where Beauty Bets just took off and kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. I was what my mother identified later on in life, and has given us some, I think, relief now that there's a name for it. But I was definitely a highly sensitive person, still am. And so when you're 5 years old and you have all these feelings, but you don't have the words for them, or you don't know how to advocate for yourself, or you don't know how to have mean, I don't even think I could make small talk at a young age. So like, I think ultimately I just didn't know how to like connect with people in the way that I needed to. This sounds really heavy now. Back then it was just like, I'm the tallest girl in kindergarten, and I don't really like playing with dolls, but I don't know, like, and I just never felt like I fit in. And I would say, did anyone really feel like they fit in growing up? Like, I don't think this is special, but I took it hard because human connection is like what I live for, which, Ashley, like, and so as a kid who wanted deep friendships before deep friendships were going to be available to me,
right,
as this old soul, as this sensitive person, it took a long time to get there. And now this is in the book, of course, but I combated that by being a high performing individual. I was the straight A student on on varsity this, on varsity that, went to a really good college, like did all the things because that was survival for me.
Yeah.
And also, I think in the back of my head, I thought, if I can get out of here and I can go see the world, and I went away to college, and then I will get my bearings and become who I'm supposed to be. And it happened. I mean, growing up was hard, but adulting was less hard. And you asked about like when this sort of started to click. And I think it was as a magazine editor. A big part of my job was interviewing people, obviously. So I was out interviewing like store owners and designers and makeup artists, and I was going to industry events, and I was out in the world meeting so many people that I realized, oh, there are all these people out here that I can be friends with who I really appreciate. And the more that I just decided to be myself and do things that felt like me, like be an editor or go like, start a book club and invite people that I hardly knew to a book club. Like suddenly, like everything opened up, and I felt good in my skin, and and then had like all the confidence in the world to start a beauty blog and do whatever the fuck I wanted to do, which is chase you. But yes, the depression, I had a therapist once who called it walking wounded. So and I think that's a psychological term. And I call it like I was a functioning depressed person instead of like a functioning alcoholic. So, and I think there are more and more people that are in that state today. I mean, our mental health crisis is real and growing. And that's also part of the reason we wrote this book. I mean, is we don't want people to feel alone. And what made me feel depressed was feeling alone, even if I was surrounded by people.
So where are you right now on that journey? Because I think one of the things that I always feel and I struggle with is that I am like and go through these phases, right? Where you feel so inspired and connected and like, oh man, this is it. And then there are inevitably, because we're human and it's life, moments where it's the opposite of that. And this work so deeply. And I know that, it's been formative for who you have become and who you are and kind of your purpose here. But I imagine that you also still struggle. It's not like you just all of a sudden the light goes on and it stays on. So where are you on that journey right now?
Yeah, it's so true. I remember no longer being depressed and thinking, oh, it's just going to stay this way forever. I got it figured out. Yeah. It's sort of like you get a new job and you're like, everything's amazing. And they're like, well, back to reality. Like it's anything healing. We're just peeling back layers of an onion. So you get to the next layer of your personal healing journey, self-understanding, self-awareness, growth, what I have the tools though now. Like I can conjure up a checklist in my mind without even thinking about it. Of why am I sad? Like you need to really, if you are feeling that way, like ask yourself why, and keep asking why until you really get to it. And then is that something that you can do something about? And then for me, if the sadness, and I feel more like it's sadness at this point because I know I haven't been like clinically depressed in so long. So it's more, has this gone on for more than a day or two?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's also circumstance, and I'm not a psychologist, not playing one on TV. There's also circumstantial depression where you are down because something really shitty and hard is happening. And like, that's normal and allowed, and you need to just be with it and process through it. But if I were in bed for more than a day or two, or if I were just like, this isn't passing, and I have worked out, eaten well, meditated, gotten rest, talked to a friend, talked to another friend, journaled, all those things, and I'm still there, then I would be, bringing in a professional. And I have a therapist, and I'm not on a regular schedule. It's more of like, I need a tune up. Something's going on in my life. And that's what works for me. I've been in this career transition for a little over a year, trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life next. And I went to my annual physical. And part of that was taking, I forget what it's called, but it's a mental health inventory. It's just like a quick questionnaire, right? It's standard. Everyone gets the same one. And I'm taking it, and everything's on a scale. And I'm realizing, oh, I am not where I want to be. I am like fine. And I didn't say anything, but my doctor brought it up at the end of our session. And she's like, do you want to talk about this? I'm like, yeah, I don't want to just be, I'm okay. Like, I like thriving, and and I know I'm doing all the things. Like, I'm not kicking it. So, but it really took taking that test for me to realize that, like, I just was getting used to it. And so I went back on, it had been, to your point, it had been years since I had been on any medication. Like, I don't know, more than a decade. And so I'm like, let's go back on the low dose and see if it helps. And it does, but and I know everyone has their feelings and experiences with medication, but it helps me from getting that real, like, chemically feeling depressed. The chemical feeling, you can, like, it's sort of, it's different. So it helps with that, but it doesn't mean I still don't have to do all the other work,
Yeah. I think that's so important to hear, because, and Betsy, I know, we've talked about different stuff in our conversations, both on this podcast and off the air too, of like, the work doesn't end. Like, you don't reach the finish line and then all of a sudden you've arrived as this like enlightened person who it's like every day you begin again, and every day you wake up and it's like, you're not just all of a sudden, oh, I'm a good mom, or I'm a good daughter, I'm a good like wife or sister. It's like every single day, are you going to commit to doing the things that make you that way? And that's something that I think as a kid and a young person, I never really understood fully.
That's a question that I actually have for you, Elizabeth. And it's sort of a complicated idea, but I feel like it will resonate with so many women, which is this idea of like, we want to prioritize ourselves. We want to prioritize self-care, which comes in many forms. It can come in the form of exercise or beauty or therapy or alone time. And yet we also feel this pressure to be present and caring, both for the people in our lives and then also like in whatever job we have. And I think, especially, I was wondering for you, because you have done so many amazing things. Like, you were starting this healing company, but did it feel like it was also draining you? Like, I guess my question is, how do we balance, if for those of us that really care about self-care, the work that comes along with prioritizing ourselves, because there's never enough time in the day to feel like we're doing it all well?
I don't think the answer is easy, but it's simple to me, and I can only speak to my experience. If I'm honoring myself in my relationships, in my work, in my personal dialogue and growth, then I don't feel pulled in different directions. Then I feel balanced. So a priority for me is spending time, quality time with my friends, my family, my husband. That is not a burden to me because that's the choice that I make. I don't have a problem saying no to something that is not feeding me. Now, we all have to work But I have gone through plenty of times where I'm working 80 hours a week. Like you said, healers. I mean, when I was doing my beauty work, I also at one point was an editorial director at an agency and doing that full time. And I worked constantly, but I loved it. Like it was what I wanted to be doing. So it comes back to, what do I need? What do I want? My sister-in-law has been on this show and she talks a lot. She is like, what are your values? You say this to Ashley, like, what are your values? And are you living in a way that's aligned with them? And those values change over time. So there needs to be a little bit of a like check-in assessment with yourself, just like the mental health quiz. Like, wait, I thought I cared about my career, but like I'm 46 and I'm like, it's not going to be my number one. My number one are the people in my life now. So what's the career path that supports that?
Like it does seem simple, right? And then, but there's work that is required. And I think we all feel like work has to feel hard. I don't know if I don't know what it is. And work is hard, right? Like if you're throwing yourself into something, even if it's something you love, it doesn't just like feel like you're eating bonbons on the couch, but like the reward is in the work and knowing that you are creating something of value or doing something that matters, is as meaningful, as making a difference, whatever it may be. But I do think that there is, and we talk a lot with Chantal, who's a regular contributor to the show, of like, you can hold multiple things and it doesn't have to all be this or all be that. And a woman who you introduced me to, Taylor, who does Akashic record readings, she talked about like, you have Empress and Queen energy, and you also have 13-year-old boy energy, and you both are good and both are important, and lean into both of those because you can't be one all the time. And that's okay. And that's the vision that sometimes I feel like I can't get off my couch. I'm like, all right, I'm leaning into my 13-year-old boy energy. Like, I'm just going to sit here. I'm not going to feel bad about it. Like, here we are.
Well, and I would add to that. I know that I'm a person who needs to be on the couch and needs a lot of sleep and needs to read a book for 3 hours on a Saturday and needs to spend time with people who give me energy versus drain my energy. Like I feel very happy being selfish about all of those things because I will not function or thrive if I don't have them. Mine are different from yours. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that is something we continue to move away from in this society, is this cookie cutter traditional, like how it's always done. Like, I mean, I won't get into like women and working women and women in the workplace. Like what? Just like you need to figure out how to do you as best you can. And that is where the balance lies.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned your sister-in-law who is Christine, who was on this podcast when we were at the Super Bowl, and she's amazing. It's how we know each other. There's a wonderful sister. We call it the sister in love connection because I have many sisters through marriage who are just so meaningful in my life. And you are certainly in that realm, Elizabeth. And I think, one of the things that you have said to me was, so work is going great. This beauty world is taking off. You thought you were going to ride that wave forever. Then you decided to do some work on yourself, and you came into the healer space, and you said it cracked you open. And it was the first time you didn't feel like an accident on this planet. So can you just walk through how you kind of got to this space?
Yeah, I think when my career got to a place where I didn't know what I wanted to do for most of my life. I mean, I said Vogue and skating, but no, like I didn't know until like my 30s when I really found this flow. And I think that's what we're going for in work, to your earlier point. Like it's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. You're learning something new. But finding the flow is a wonderful place to be, and the goal. And so I was in flow with my beauty business, and I think that the first thing that happened was some colleague of mine passed the business card across the table. Like at the time there was like an actual business card. Now we just, text each other, but, and sent me to her intuitive medium. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life in this healing space. And because I knew from that conversation, like, oh, I'm not a mistake. Oh, this is like who I am and how I am and the things I care about. And it was all like, oh, no, that's what you signed up for. That's this is all natural and you're okay. And that was this pulling of the thread, which led me down paths like breath work and acupuncture and tarot and Reiki and on and on and on. And I knew that with this stable career underneath me that made me happy, that it was time to take advantage of that and do the work on myself. I was also in a marriage that was not happy. And so it was really like, I need to shore myself up here and like see who I am and what I want, and heal some of those old wounds and limiting beliefs. And here's all the jargon I'm throwing at you that are true. So I did that, and it never stopped. And I was in this great position where I had my own platform, and I was still writing for a lot of publications. So like I got access to all of these people, these beautiful healers, so easily, and got to share their stories. And that just became one of my missions when I realized, oh my gosh, all of these incredible practitioners are out there, and so many of us need them. I met Monica, my co-author, during that time. And it was really after I had done years of this work. That was the moment when I was ready. Like, you two are ahead of the curve here. Like, but there weren't people talking about the other side. They were talking, maybe angels in church, but like, I didn't know about this thing. And so she was kind of like the final frontier, was meeting her and working with her for a few years. I would really encourage you, like, listen to this podcast with Monica, or read the book, because she has seen all of these beings. Okay. So my co-author had a near-death experience, 9.5 years old, I believe, car accident. This is when I don't even want to call it a gift, but it is a gift. But that's when she first connected with the other side. And they told her she had to go back. She didn't want to go back. She didn't want to go back. And they said, you have to teach this. And so that was really huge for me, to meet someone who, like, I think I've always felt that. Like, I've always believed in a higher power and felt a higher power from a very young age. And I would say that's one of the things that probably got me through life for many years, is like, I don't feel alone with this higher power, whatever you want to call it. And so, but like, meeting someone who really is connected, and then her mission is to teach us all. She thinks this is available to all of us. And so the more that I worked with the other side, the more I was like, oh, we got to tell people. Because it's been life-giving,
right,
for me.
And that feeling of not being alone, which is the thing that, I mean, when you talk about the mental health crisis and epidemic, it's loneliness is like one of the number one killers of people now. Like, it really is so real. And I do want to dive into, like, you've referred to yourself as a recovering Catholic. You Catholic in the church. Went to school. We've had this conversation many times. I'm a practicing Catholic, and I think there is this feeling that, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, am I not supposed to be doing this? Accessing the other side? Is it against the teachings, at least in part? But here's what's interesting to me about this. So I was feeling that way. And as I'm reading your book, I'm trying to wrestle with, like, okay, how do I feel about all of this? I go to mass. It was right after I finished your book, and our priest's entire homily is on angels and how they are very real. And so then I start reading more about it. And like, the catechism explicitly says that the existence of angels is the truth of faith and an essential element of Christian faith. And I mean, according to like several Catholic teachings, you can and should speak to your guardian angels directly. And so what you and Monica write about in your book is actually in line with the teaching of the church that I believe in, which in some ways surprised me. And I think the timing of that homily, again, it was perfect and really made the connection whole. So I think for people who initially have the same sort of reservations because of whatever faith they have or whatever feelings they have, how have you kind of moved through that, or talked to people about that, and how much does that surface, I guess?
Right. It doesn't surface because I just think we don't call in people who are resistant, like the book, your podcast, like, it always finds the people who need it and are ready for it. But simply, I mean, spirituality is non-denominational. Religion is an institution that is man-made. Spirituality validates all of that and it does not matter. Like everyone has access. Everyone is a part of the universe, whether you're religious or not. The same goes for, it doesn't matter what your political party is, what your sexual orientation is. This is accessible to everyone, and that's by nature. We all get to have this support. So yeah, I mean, and the angel piece is ironically, I was like, oh no, angels, what are you talking about, Monica? Do they have wings? Like, I do not believe in things like that. And she's like, I'm sorry to tell you, but like they do. And because angels were around. I mean, they're real. And it's hard for me to still believe that because I've never seen one. But yeah, and that's why I mean, your church, like, yeah, it is a faith thing, no matter, this is a tough topic. But it's not.
Yeah,
there is no conflict. There is no conflict.
That's my point.
Because spirituality embodies all of us, all beings, all faiths, all belief systems. There is,
And the thing about faith is that the whole point of it is that you don't know, right? Like,
no, you don't know.
That's what faith is by definition. Right. So, there's I think that's a big piece of this. Betsy, you were nodding your head and saying that, like, yeah, you felt that way when you were starting to read about the angels. Like, what was your?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Catholic school, and I think I had like a rejection of that later in life. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, sort of self-identify as someone who's like, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, kind of like skeptical of not necessarily religion, but like sort of like things that we are meant to believe in that we cannot see. That's a huge foundation of like what my childhood was. And I feel like I associate like my having critical thinking with rejecting some of that. And I'm still working through it. But I just want to sort of like use this to give a plug for the book, because like you were just talking about it, like I felt like I was talking to someone who was like, listen, I get it. I get that like these words are going to be hard for you if you're coming at it from Ashley's perspective or my perspective, but like, hear me out. And that was so approachable for me reading that book. And also, I mean, you've talked a lot about how you've been a writer your whole life, but like, it's just so well written. As an English teacher, I was just like, it's funny and like not easy in the sense that like it's short words, but like it just feels like your friend is reaching out and having a conversation with you. And so that really broke down those barriers that I was feeling. So just kudos to you, because it felt really like affirming to read it and not feel like I had to reject a part of myself.
Makes me so happy. Like, thank you for sharing that. And that's the goal. And gosh, I didn't know you were an English teacher. We wanted this to resonate with as many people who needed it. I mean, I am a very conversational writer. One of the things that I tell young writers and people who don't like to write is read it back to yourself out loud. Would you say that? Like, so it's me speaking to you and with Monica's wisdom, and it's all woven together. I mean, we co-authored it, but we didn't want anyone who needed it to feel like on the outside or feel that they couldn't find themselves somewhere in the book. And we're not here to, I can tell you, we're not here to like, I do not try to convince anyone of anything. Like, I have no interest. I would rather be talking to someone who like is ready and needs it. And like, and you know what? That's also a fine point. Not everyone needs this. Some people are content. Some people don't need to ever change careers. Some people don't need a partner. Like, I don't. Do you. But if feeling like you have a team that you can say, help me, or I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, or I feel alone, like, it's here for you.
I was just going to say, like, given what you've just said about like, this is for people who need to hear it, and it calls in the people who are interested. Like, what has the response been? Have you heard from people who have read the book that have had it change their life in some way?
Yes. I mean, I will tell you, Monica's podcast, I think is like the number one listen to that episode on healers. So, I knew that it was already resonating. And, we had a woman very early on when it was published. She said she bought the book. She forgot about it. She put it in her tote bag and she was visiting, the grave of her teenage son, who I don't believe had passed away very long ago and was in a like state of, I don't know if I can go on, and like, God help me kind of moment, like yelled, like screamed out into the void, and heard that she needed to read the book. And it was right there in her bag. And we have found this often, people who have lost loved ones, while we don't spend a lot of time on it in the book, because the book is like really about your journey, like the reassurance and feeling like they haven't really left me and they're still there and they're still sending me signs. I mean, there are many stories in this book about like cardinals are a really big sign for people whose parents or grandparents have passed. They show up as cardinals a lot. I don't know why that's so popular, but it is. But it gives people a lot of peace to just know like this conversation can continue and no one, like the soul is still there and available. And yeah, that makes us very happy. That makes us really happy because it brings people peace.
Okay. There's again, the layer, this podcast is like an onion and I just want to keep pulling it back and we could go so much further down this path. I do want to make sure we talk about what you're doing right now. And, you know, I've said this directly to you, but I want to say it, you know, out loud on a podcast. You have been someone who I just feel like I met at the right time. And you have these friends. And I feel very lucky to have all sorts of different friends and people who come into your life. But I feel like you can almost kind of split the relationship into two major categories. There's like surface friends who are a great hang, you enjoy their company and you do things together. And then there are friends who you can like truly just go there with from the beginning, too, who make you like comfortable going there, digging in, not feeling weird about the fact that it is fucking insane that we are all walking around together on this like rock that's spinning 1,000 miles an hour through the universe. And like, and we know that it's weird. I mean, I feel like there are just people who see the world in that way and are willing to talk about it. And you are one of those people and always have been from the moment that we met for that random blind lunch date. Through our conversations, what I have loved is that I feel like we always sort of were able to give each other what we needed a little bit, or we always left like feeling like I had so much more energy and excitement and all the rest. And I think for you over the last few years since I've known you, there has been this feeling of like, there's been these projects that some did, some didn't go. There's been things, and there's been this sort of void of like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? I have some unmet desires of like how I'm going to express myself. And you are now in a place that I feel like the next chapter is starting to reveal itself in some ways. So can you tell us about LQ and kind of just like what you're working on and what you've kind of discovered in this little mini chapter right now?
Yes, you fill my cup as well. So I'm very
thank you. That would have been an easier way to say that. Instead, I like rambled for 18
It's easier when you're not the one talking though. So Chase You is very much about like living a mission-driven life. And I don't mean mission like you have to go on mission, but like we're all here for a reason. And it doesn't need to be like professionally, right? It's just, it's really you showing up as yourself and sharing those gifts with the world. And so I have had a very clear mission for many years. I'm going to build this beauty business. I'm going to make this skincare line. Oh, now I'm going to start a healing podcast. Oh, now I'm going to build a healing platform. Oh, now I'm going to write a book. Oh, I've got an agent. We're going to shop a TV show. And now I'm going to be a New York Times bestseller. I'm going to get the TV show. Like it's all just very clear to me. And as we know, like books do not like pay the bills very often, and the TV show has not happened yet. And I sold my business, and but not in a way where I don't have to work. And I do not have the thing right now. I do not have this clear mission. And because for me, mission is a career. Like that is how I'm wired. Maybe that'll change. But I usually have it in my sights and then I just go all in. And it's really uncomfortable for me to not know what that is. And so I've been trying a lot of things. I've been, throwing things at the wall and have had some great like clients and conversations with friends who are starting businesses who need guidance. I love doing that. I love building brands. So in this like unknown space that's highly uncomfortable, I got for the first time in my life a career coach. He said, I need you to make something. I need you to just make something because that's what you do. And you are stuck. You feel like you don't have any creative vision right now, but like we got to dust the cobwebs off, and it needs to be something that you are just doing for the love of it and the joy, and cannot have, nothing that you need to quantify or monetize, et cetera, which is like how I usually build businesses and those success metrics. And so what is this thing that would just like get me out of bed? And I would just be like, what's the thing that you can do for hours and time has, flown by. And so I was sharing this with one of my really dear friends and old editorial colleagues. We used to work together. She and I decided that we would start a Substack. So here's this platform that everyone's hopping on. It's like the new blog, and like it's probably good for me to figure out how that works. But really it was, okay, what do I want to write about that just is so fun for me? And if 5 people read it, that's enough.
Yeah.
The brief is that it is bringing me joy. And so we started a Substack about a month ago. It's called La Femme Quotidienne, which is Women of the Day, loosely translated. And it is an advice conversation about all of the topics that I get asked about on a regular basis from friends, from family, from the internet, like everything from the heavy stuff to the spiritual stuff to the like, what color lipstick are you wearing today? And what is your favorite sunscreen? Like the whole gamut. And she and I both go into like a conversation together with our thoughts and feelings and have our sort of like banter, and then share like all the things we love, like this recipe, this TV show, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really going back to my lifestyle days, because that's what I did for many years. It's just basically share my opinions and my curated picks. And if I'm really honest with myself, that is my mission. I like things and experiences in life, and I know what I love, and I love sharing them. And I like a beautiful life. I like to maximize this beautiful life. And so now we're doing it in a newsletter.
There's the title of this episode. Maximize your beautiful life.
Maximize your beautiful life.
LFQ. I'm just going to give a plug for that too. And again, we'll link it in the show notes, but
it's free.
Yeah. And you can make a donation, which you should, but I feel like Betsy was talking about what a great writer you are. And I will also redirect that compliment to you, Betsy, because I actually think that both of you guys write with the same tone, which is this really accessible. Anyone who's read our show notes this year can understand that I am no longer writing them, that Betsy is writing them, because they're just, it feels like you're sitting on the couch with your friend. It's like witty, it's meaningful, it's to the point. It's the way that you both write is beautiful. And so not only are you getting that, and you're talking about kind of real things and all these different questions and stuff, but then the stuff that you link to, you are a real life. I will always go to you. I remember when we went to lunch the other day and I'm like, okay, I need to get some Christmas presents for people. And you're like, oh, I've got the place. And we go in and like, there's just this little shop and it was all these things. And I'm like, how do you know about all of this stuff? Like, how do you, I've never even heard of this in any of it.
If I could just spend other people's money for them as a living, I would do it. I love shopping for other people.
Yeah. That is a thing. Yeah, I've literally bought like 3 or 4 things, I think, from the first 2 newsletters that I've gotten. I'm like, oh yeah, or either whether it was a present for somebody or a toiletry bag that I just got. Like it's your recommendation. It really is meaningful to me, and you've never steered me wrong. And I just think I love that that was the advice that you got and that you actually did something, because I think so often we feel like things have to be perfect before they start, and oh, we got to make sure it's the right thing. And no, just do something and you will learn along the way. I mean, this podcast is a perfect example of that. We almost, didn't start it because it just felt like, well, we need to get this thing perfect. And it's like, just start doing it, start making something and see what happens. And so I love that you're doing it, and it will lead to, or if not even remind you of your mission, of what you are here to do and what lights you up.
It did. And as soon as it went out, I mean, it was like work in the beginning. You got to learn new technology. And like, there were moments I'm like, just like with the podcast, like, do I really have to do it? If it had not been a homework assignment, I don't think I would have ever followed through for myriad excuses. But once it went out, I realized that a part of myself had been dormant for a long time. And I felt way more like myself. And this is before any feedback. This is before any, there's no there except just like, oh, this is what I do. I tell people what to read and buy and watch and how to, make their lives beautiful and all the things you just said. Like that just brings, home why I think this was my coach, why he made me do it. So, yes.
So good. It's so good.
Thank you for reading.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I love it.
That has been a theme that has been emerging this entire season of this podcast has been like, do the thing that you love, do it for yourself. And if that is true, then it will resonate with other people. In fact, that is probably the number one reason it will resonate with other people, is because it will feel authentic. And that has popped up in so many different forms this season. Like, we had a woman on who talked about writing a Medium post about being Jewish in the wake of October 7th. And she talked about, like, I did it for myself. And now here, and you talking about this, it just feels like, if you're talking about signs, like, this is the takeaway of the season.
Okay, I'm taking it. Yeah, and we get in our heads, we've gotten away from do what you love to like, oh, do what you love and it will make money. It's almost better when it starts as a hobby. Like, I mean, or just it's just your side. I hate the word hustle, but like, don't put any pressure on it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I wouldn't. And yes, it could become, I mean, mine have become businesses, but like that cannot be the reason.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it does have to be authentic. You're absolutely right. I love that that's your takeaway.
It is. And if people listening at home, if you need a sign that you need to go do a thing, like, just start whatever it is, whether it's making something, whatever fills your cup, like, what is something that you can do that don't have the outcome attached to it? We talk so much about how, like, whether a thing is successful or not is whether or not it made you money or felt like it was worth your time. And I think we've gone so awry in how we feel like, what is a useful, time is this precious thing. Right. Yes, time is this precious thing, but that doesn't mean that you need to maximize every second of your day for some success, cup that you're trying to fill. Like, I feel like time is precious. And yet when you treat it as something of just like accompanying someone or being with someone or just reading a book on your couch for 3 hours, or doing something that is never going to get you paid $1, but it somehow allowed you to become a little bit better version of yourself. Like, that is what we should be chasing. And when you start paying attention to that, the other stuff will come. It's like the surrender is also, I guess, kind of the last thing I would love to have you hit on before you go, because this is so real. You talk about being in that liminal space of like, it's uncomfortable. You're not sure where you're going next. There is, and I'm in this space right now in a big way. There is a surrender that is required. And I think of the word surrender as like, roll over and lay down and see what happens. Like, that's not what surrender is. Surrender is to continue going into trust that you are going to find what you're supposed to find. So the theme of surrender, when you talk about the healing space on the other side, what would you share around that?
It's interesting because as someone who's written about this topic, I've never been tested so hard on a thing that I like, oh, you thought you were the teacher? Back to the classroom you go, Elizabeth. Like, what about your trust and your faith walk? And like it was like I was living it, but this for me professionally, that's the hardest type of surrender for me. Like, so I'm really good with other types of surrender, but like I'm getting pushed in a new way. And I reread The Surrender Experiment, which is my favorite. It's more than self-help. Michael Singer Surrender Experiment. He also wrote The Untethered Soul, which is really wonderful if you're going through if you want to learn more about mindfulness and mental health. I had to reread it because I needed to be reminded that like just the things, there are things we can't see and there are things we can't know, and we can just get up and do our best every day, but you don't get it everything you want on your own timeline. Like, and I sort of fancy myself like a princess, like, no, but I would like it. I've worked really hard. I'm a good person. Like, where is it? And so, and it's also hard, Ashley, when you've had a lot of success. The surrender becomes harder when you've had a lot of success and you reach this point where like it is not all humming along now. I do not know where it's going. Maybe we'll circle back. but it does feel better. It feels better to surrender. It feels better. It feels better than worrying.
It feels better than worrying. And I think
better than worrying. Doesn't mean you just like sit there and do nothing.
Right.
Like,
it doesn't mean that you freeze. It doesn't mean that you don't do things like you do. You get up, you begin again, all of that. But I will just say I was listening again. I mentioned that the episode with Monica on healers, and I'm walking, and she said something that I just started like laughing out loud because I felt like I'm like, oh my God, she's talking to me. She said, if you just got laid off from your job, or if you've ever been laid off, know that that is your team. Like, know that they are doing that for you. There's something bigger waiting, and you doesn't feel like it right now, and you don't know what it is, and yet just trust.
Yeah. Trust.
And one foot in front of the other. And the harder that you grip and the more control you want, it's working the opposite direction. Like, it's like ease up.
Right.
And flow.
What we resist persists and all that good stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I don't say it to everyone, but I mean, when it feels like the right person or opportunity, like losing your job is a gift. Like that is, and I believe that Monica's taught me that like it's a gift. And I think many people would say I wasn't going to leave it myself. I needed to be like kicked out of the nest. Like, you look back and you're like, thank God that happened. So yeah, we're going to see what's around the corner.
I love it. Well, and I got to say, girl, the podcast space and listening to you host, it's so fun to have people in your life who you know in a certain way, and then you get to see them in a different light. And I'm like, oh shit, she's really good. And she's got the whole, it was really fun. I'm going to go listen to some more of those episodes because they're terrific.
Dude, they're timeless. They really are. I mean, don't listen, you don't have to listen to me, but the healers that are on there, they're my favorites, and they know what they're talking about. And yeah, it was really fun. So, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for coming on. And I'm just going to shout out the Sister in Love connection because I really am so lucky to have all these incredible sister-in-laws, and Diana and Kate and Megan. But that sister-in-law tree extends far beyond those in my like a little immediate family. And your brother is married to Christina Mack, who we mentioned. And I know Christina because of my sister-in-law, Diana. So it's like this beautiful mind's web of how it's all connected. And I still couldn't really name probably all of how it's connected, but it's good to be related to you.
You as well.
So there you have it, folks. Elizabeth Kendig. And again, we just are scratching the surface with all of the stories and many amazing things. This could be like a 6-part series. But Betsy, I just want to say thank you to you because I think, when I said, hey, will you read this book? I want to have a dear friend of mine on. She's got an amazing story and has written this book that has impacted me. And you just said yes, and we're up for it and we're open to it. And I really appreciate it and hope you enjoyed all of the touch points that were amazing between the two of you as well.
Yeah, I did. And, you mentioned that you felt like as soon as you met Elizabeth, that there was a deep connection, and you just said like a dear friend of mine. And I was like, she's my dear friend too. Like that's how I feel after having this conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Perfectly said. Yeah. And I think, she's the one thing that we didn't get to, well, there are many things, but one of the things that she has really helped me with, is thinking about what a mother is, right? Like the podcast, the basis of this podcast is about motherhood and parenthood and your story, and it's evolved. But she has really, we were having a conversation the other day, and she just said, I think when you think about being a mother, that like healing is mothering. The work she is doing, LFQ in a way is mothering. It's showing up in a way that people need to be taken care of. And I just think it's such a beautiful way to look at how the role of a mom and how it can look. So she's opened my eyes to a lot of things, but that was one thing that I didn't get to mention that I did want to say, that just my dear thanks to her for all of the ways that she's opened my eyes. And I really mean it when I say, and Betsy, I put you in this exact same category. Like she's a God friend. Like she is somebody who there's a deeper connection there. I'm like, man, you make me a better version, and you allow me to feel like myself, and that I'm not crazy and weird for thinking all these big things. When you find those people who, and anybody listening to this knows who they are, like when you find those people that you connect with on a deeper level, hang on to those ones, because it really matters. It really matters.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you if you're listening all the way to the end, boy, you should get a free hat, which I will tell you, we've got discounts. YM15, you get 15% off your hats. See, there was a reason you stuck around all the way.
You only know this if you listen till the end.
You only know this. We're not going to put it out on Instagram. We will know the people who purchase a hat from yourmom.co and put YM15 as the discount code. You're the real ones. So thank you. And we love you, and we'll see you soon. We'll do it again soon. But thanks for sharing this space as always, Betsy.
Of course. Thanks for having me.